Ferguson on fire. Protests erupt in Missouri after a grand jury fails to indict the police officer who shot a black teenager. We have team coverage. Playing catch-up. How Mali is taking steps to shut down the chain of Ebola transmission. We'll have the details from Bamako. And a musical solution? An all-star lineup of West African performers release a single to combat Ebola. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We begin in the U.S. state of Missouri. A grand jury's decision not to charge white police officer Darren Wilson in the shooting death of African-American teenager Michael Brown resulted in more violence and destruction in the city of Ferguson. VOA's Ken Faribault has more on how, despite pleas from community leaders, the reaction was anything but peaceful.
Ferguson, Missouri is burning. The reaction to the decision not to charge Officer Darren Wilson was almost immediate violence by some in the crowd that assembled outside the Ferguson Police Department.
You are all unlawfully assembled if you are in the middle of the street.
Police responded with tear gas. And protesters reacted by setting fires. Soon after the announcement, things here escalated quickly. Behind me, you can see that we've got two police cars fully engulfed in flames, and this is all coming as riot police are fully deployed here, ready to tackle whatever these protesters throw at them. Violence was not on the agenda for the Ferguson resident who goes by the name Django.
I pray for the best, because me personally, I'm not going to go destroy nothing. I want it to be a better outcome, How y'all doing, officer?
A prevailing concern was that the violence would overshadow efforts to resolve the racial tension Django says exists between Ferguson's residents and its police force.
We got a reason to be out here. We live here. This is our area. So that means if he got away with it, he gonna get away with it, he gonna get away with it, he gonna get away with it.
The lesson is that all of us need to be at the table talking. And it shouldn't be just one race trying to speak up for the inequities that we see.
Mark Esters found himself trapped behind a police line formed to keep people away from the heart of the escalating unrest in Ferguson. Though he was disappointed by the violence, he was not surprised.
This is something that's been a culmination of years of inequity.
Scenes of looting and Ferguson aflame made this St. Louis suburb look more like a war zone than a small town. It was overwhelming to Julie Cruz.
I've had enough. I've had enough of racism and bigotry, and St. Louis can do better.
Once the fires are put out and the violence ends, Ferguson will need to be rebuilt by repairing the structures that were damaged, destroyed, or looted, and by improving the relationship between the police force and its citizens.
We have the right to fight for our freedom!
Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Ferguson, Missouri.
Well, for more on the situation, we're joined live via Skype by VOA's Alberto Pimienta in Ferguson, Missouri. Alberto, give us the very latest.
Well, Vincent, right now, the entire area of West Florissant, where some of the worst protests happened last night, it's completely closed up to everyone. This is seen right now. At the moment, it's being treated as a crime scene. So as I said, no one is being let in. We like to remind the audience that West Florissant Avenue is where one of the worst protests happened last night, but that was also the epicenter of the protest in August. And as I mentioned, this street right now at the moment completely closed up by the authorities that are investigating and treating this as a crime scene. At the same time, there's a couple dozen protesters around Clayton, Missouri. That's the city where the grand jury deliberated. But a very, very chaotic night here in Ferguson, Vincent.
And we know it's very cold today. Perhaps that has kept a few of the people away. But give us some perspective here. Looking at some of those images, it gave you the sense that the entire city was on fire. What is the reality?
Vincent, that's a really good question, and I think it's important for us to tell our audience that it was not the whole city of Ferguson. There were about 3 different areas in Ferguson that were completely just immersed in chaos and violence, and not the whole city, but those areas where these images that are now around the world happen. Those areas were like that. I mean, there was not hyping up by the media. It started up really calmly, you know, after the announcement by the prosecutor. In about 15 minutes after, we started seeing a group of protesters trying to flip a police car, and that's when everything just turned for the worse and turned into violent protests. The authorities talked last night, and they said that they never expected this to happen.
Very, very quickly, give us the idea of the composition of the protesters. Was it all black people protesting?
It was majority black people, Vincent. I mean, we also saw some, white people, Hispanic people, Asian descent people, but the majority of the people were African American, and the authorities also said that the majority of the arrested last night, 29 arrested, were from the St. Louis area and not what some people call professional rioters that come from out of town.
Well, Alberto, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thank you, Vincent.
Well, that is VOA's Alberto Pimiento reporting live via Skype from Ferguson, Missouri. Here in Washington, from the White House, President Barack Obama called on Americans to accept the grand jury's decision.
There are Americans who agree with it, and there are Americans who are deeply disappointed, even angry. It's an understandable reaction. But I join Michael's parents in asking anyone who protests this decision to do so peacefully.
And here in the studio, I'm joined by VOA's Chris Simpkins, who has been following this case very, very closely. Chris, were you surprised by what you saw?
Not at all, Vincent. I think the culmination of frustration really boiled over into the streets last night in Ferguson. It's existed in that community since August. I think a lot of people in that community felt in their hearts of heart that Officer Wilson would not have been indicted, so they were prepared to let their frustrations out last night.
And you know, Chris, for many people, including our viewers, this happened when, still in their minds, they had the decision that was made down in Florida of Trayvon Martin, and they were saying, let's see if this is going to be a bit different. Now, what could you say is behind this kind of decision?
Well, I think that there is a growing frustration in the African American community, not just in Ferguson, not just down in Florida where the incident involving Trayvon Martin, but across the country, especially in larger cities, where the issue is of police profiling African Americans and a feeling among the African American community about police brutality, especially towards young African males. And they see this as a major problem. They feel that the court system doesn't work for them and that leaders are not doing anything to address this problem and work on solutions to change it.
Now, for some, they would say there's still many police officers who do a fine job, even risk their lives. So is this an isolated, or are these isolated cases of white policemen targeting black people, or at least doing something like this and getting away with it?
Well, the Justice Department is looking into that now, not only in Ferguson, but they are reviewing other police departments to see if officers have adequate training, if officers are using excessive force when they don't have to. These are things that came up as a result of Ferguson, but if the review about the Ferguson Police Department shows that more training needs to be done, it could create changes nationwide at police departments across the country.
From what you've been hearing, do you get the sense that even the white communities in some of these cities get kind of frustrated by the appearance of this kind of double standards on how police handle people of different races?
I think so. There's a frustration. I think whites and blacks tend to see these type of encounters that male suspects have with police a little differently, because they don't have the history of dealing with the police in the way that many African Americans in this country have. They don't have the same perceptions or trust level towards the police, say, that whites may have. So they see things through different lenses, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So if there is anything that could come out of this particular case, what could it be?
I think it will come from a review of police departments like in Ferguson to see if training is adequate, if police are not following regulations in how they handle and approach suspects of brown skin or African Americans. I think that they will also be able to determine that these are problems that we can solve. And I think that's one of the more positive things, that we will have a review of police departments to make sure that police are conducting themselves accordingly.
Now, very quickly, does this always tend to affect how a black male reacts, say, when they are stopped by a police officer?
Sure. I think blacks that are pulled over by the police are very cautious and very afraid. And I've heard stories about them being afraid when they are pulled over. But I think there's a lot more emphasis about how to respond when you're pulled over so that you don't have a bad encounter with the police.
Well, Chris, thank you very much.
Sure.
Well, developing story now out of Egypt. Police say at least 10 people were killed when an 8-story building collapsed in the northern Cairo suburb of Mataria early Tuesday. They expect that death toll number to rise. Many others were injured, and rescue crews continue to search through the rubble for survivors. Residents in 4 surrounding buildings in the neighborhood were also evacuated from their homes. Tenants of the collapsed building say they had filed formal complaints after the owner of the building built 3 more stories on it. An official speaking in condition of anonymity confirmed the collapse was caused by the unauthorized construction. Such incidents are not uncommon in Egyptian cities, where many new apartment buildings are put up in violation of safety standards and old ones are routinely neglected. Well, in Nigeria, 2 female suicide bombers blew themselves up, killing at least 10 people in a crowded market area in the northeastern city of Maiduguri. There was no claim of responsibility, but suspicion is likely to fall on Boko Haram. Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan plans to ask the National Assembly to extend the state of emergency in 3 northeastern states hit by the insurgency when the initial declaration expires this week. Well, turning now to the Ebola crisis, almost a month after a 70-year-old Ghanaian imam sought treatment at a clinic in Bamako, Mali is scrambling to stop a potential outbreak. 5 people have died so far. A 6th related Ebola case was confirmed Saturday. Viewers and look reports from Mali on what the country is doing to shut down the chain of transmission.
Every day, twice a day, the teams report back from around Bamako after checking just over 300 people, all of them linked to the Ghanaian imam who died of Ebola at this private clinic October 27th. Most of the contacts are cooperating, but not all.
You haven't been able to reach him? Didn't we tell him not to travel?
Coordinator Dr. Ramada Sako takes down his information. The teams are learning on the job.
If they don't come to us, we go to them. If we can figure out his village, we can see if there is a health post there and get him that way. Because this is the critical period. We don't want him to develop symptoms there.
Mali is playing catch-up. The circle of contacts widened rapidly in the 2 weeks that went by before health authorities here found out about the imam. Dr. Ibrahim Asose Fall of the WHO in Mali got the news from Guinea. By then, a nurse and a doctor who had treated the imam in Bamako were already sick. The clinic hadn't tested the imam. It's a cautionary tale for other countries in the region.
This never should have happened in a private or public clinic. Everyone knows the situation in Guinea. Had we known sooner, we could have prevented a certain number of contacts. It was late.
Molly is investigating the clinic and how the sick imam got past border police in Coromale. The town straddles the border. He was from the Ghanaian side. Health workers check everyone who comes in now. They keep records. They say their orders are to turn back anyone with a medical condition. This Malian man broke his arm in Conakry. Mali border officials will not let him cross. The Coromale Health Center is on alert. Dr. Drissa Berthe says they watch for Ebola symptoms and sanitize between patients.
Everyone is afraid, but we're health workers, so we can't show it. We have to stay calm. If we show we're afraid, it would be panic.
An isolation unit is under construction at the border. They have a makeshift ambulance. But an infected person may not have symptoms yet when he crosses here. The whole country has to be vigilant. Ann Look, VOA News, Coromale, Mali.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, how a low-cost incubator could save more babies' lives. The details just ahead. Stay with us. Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory. In today's health, a low-cost incubator that could save the lives of babies born prematurely. It's the invention of a young British researcher. And as viewers, George Puttich tells us, this incubator is inflatable.
Doctors say many expectant mothers in developing countries give birth prematurely, especially in refugee camps, largely because of poor diet and unhealthy living conditions. Premature birth is the biggest killer of children worldwide. Because these tiny babies are born before their lungs are fully developed, they are more susceptible to often deadly infections. But they could survive if placed in an incubator, where they would continue to develop in the closed chamber and warm, controlled environment. However, with a price tag of around $50,000, incubators are out of reach even for some hospitals. 23-year-old design engineering student James Roberts of Britain says his $400 inflatable incubator may help solve this problem.
It's basically an insulated piece of air, so it's like the difference between double and single glazing, so it's easier to keep the inside at a stable heat environment, heat temperature.
The incubator is collapsible and when folded resembles an ordinary travel bag. It is powered through a regular electrical line, but Roberts says he has found a solution in case there is a power outage, which often happens in refugee camps.
I thought, why not car batteries? There's loads of cars out there. You can use it, they're pretty readily available. So you can plug this into a car battery, it will run for 24 hours, and then when the mains comes back on, the mains can then charge this battery, and then that can run in the incubator.
Roberts won the $47,000 James Dyson Award earlier this year for his incubator design. He says the project is still in the development phase, but the prize money will help him start a company for the mass manufacturing of inflatable incubators. George Puttich, VOA News, Washington.
Well, still to come on Africa 54, one of pop music's great divas reaches a milestone. And the details in tonight's What's Trending. But first, a review of the details of the headline.
joined us. I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Egypt, a collapse of an 8-story residential building in Cairo leaves at least 18 people dead, and the death toll is expected to rise as search continues. In Libya, airstrikes hit the last functioning commercial airport in Tripoli, also damaging nearby homes. In Morocco, flash flooding has killed at least 32 and leaves 6 others missing in the southern part of the country after heavy rains. Finally, in Tunisia, secularist Beji Caid Essebsi wins the first round of elections, and vote will go to runoff in December. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Those legs, that voice, those wigs, believe it or not. Legendary diva Tina Turner is celebrating her 75th birthday. Turner, an 8-time Grammy winner known for songs like River Deep, Mountain High, and What's Love Got to Do With It, enjoyed huge successes in the late 1960s and early 1970s, performing with her husband Ike Turner. She made a big comeback in the 1980s with a string of hits. Turner retired from performing after her last tour in 2009 and became a Swiss citizen. Well, next up, Africa has yet another Ebola song. Take a listen.
De voir nos familles mourir, ne touchons pas nos malades, ne touchons pas nos mourants, tout le monde est en danger.
Was sung in French and local languages. The song uses a mixture of rap and melodies that are distinctive to West Africa to urge people to take Ebola seriously and go to a doctor if they are ill. Now, the all-star line includes Malian Salif Keita, Omar Sankari, and the duo Amadou and Mariam, among others. The Ivorian musician Tiken Jah Fokole rallied the artists. While he praised Bob Geldof's recent effort, Fokole says the song, Do They Know It's Christmas, is insulting to Africans. Ouch. Well, and finally, a leaping pear is the star of Japan's International Mascot Festival. Meet Funashi, the bouncing and talking mascot that is getting some people in Japan all excited. Now, the cuddly pear is the star of this year's International Mascot Summit in Hanyu City. But he's not the only huggable mascot in town. In fact, he's joined by 350 others. Mascots are big news in Japan, and over 400,000 visitors were in town for the festival. The mascots represent and promote cities, prefectures, and institutions. And that is what is trending today. Well, in the Democratic Republic of Congo sits Virunga, Africa's oldest national park. Virunga is also the title of a dramatic documentary expose about the people who devote themselves to protecting this World Heritage Site and home to the endangered mountain gorilla. VOA's Caroline Turner has the story.
Virunga is the true story of passionate people who risk their lives to protect the natural habitat for the critically endangered mountain gorilla in the DRC, a part of Africa that the world's forgotten.
Throughout the world, it is only in this area that you can still find mountain gorillas. There are only about 800 left in the whole world. Now, if we lose them, we will have lost something very important for humanity.
The film follows a conservationist who considers his orphaned gorillas to be family.
I always tell them, I have a family. I always tell them, you are my family. We have another family in Rumangambo, which is made up of 4 children.
Filmmaker Orlando Van Einsiedel says he wanted to make a positive film about Eastern Congo and the rangers who have hope for their country.
What's happening in this park, it's not just about protecting an area which is really important for Eastern Congo. This is also a situation which everyone in the world should be very aware of and worried about.
The Virunga Park is a contested battleground with insurgencies seeking to topple the government and exploit natural resources for profit. The story follows a French journalist and a park ranger.
The oil issue might destroy everything. If we fail, we'll lose Virunga, but we'll also lose the other parks in Congo. All I know is that oil exploitation is not compatible with conservation. I'm not saying that because I'm a ranger. It's the law that says this.
They set out to document corporate efforts to exploit oil, which is illegal under Congolese and international law.
Now we can see the value of that park mining-wise. With the intelligence, it's crazy the money you could pull out. It's colossal. Now what they defend, I'm not sure it's about animals.
Besides oil exploitation, there are poachers, armed militias, and human rights abuse.
About the fighting, we are hearing so many bombs, many bombs.
What the film's managed to do is really magnified their voices, and it's really put a media spotlight on exactly what's going on. So now whenever anyone gets death threats for opposing oil, everybody knows about it.
When a newly formed M23 rebel group declares war, there's a new threat.
The villagers are about to start leaving. We're going to stay here. I just wanted to know about food for the guerrillas. How many days left do we have? About 2. The M23 rebels are in Rabare. If they cut off Mwaro, we'll have to cope with whatever we have. They are advancing. They're nearly at Kalangera. We've got to hurry.
The filmmaker says the situation is stable today.
I would urge all your viewers to go and visit Virunga and go and see the gorillas, because that's one way that you can really, as an individual, really, contribute positively to the park.
Virunga is a visually stunning film with a dramatic narrative that is a worldwide call to action to save the habitat and gorillas from the political and environmental crisis in the Congo. Carolyn Turner, VOA News.
Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us in Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words, where we teach you about words in the news.
This word is one you hear in many stories about politicians. It has to do with trust.
The president's credibility has suffered serious damage, says analyst Stu Rothenberg. He says that will have an impact on Democratic candidates in next year's midterm elections.
Credibility. It means you can believe and trust what a person says. It is a good quality to have. So when politicians lose credibility, their popularity goes down too.
Now, when you hear the word credibility, you will know what this news word means.